There's a link to this slide deck in the YouTube description. I think there's commenter access for anyone interested. So my name's John. I'm a software engineer with about 10 years of experience. And today I'm answering 8 questions that I was asked from someone interested in landing a coding job. In addition to having the software engineering experience, I also have a PhD in economics, where I studied the return on investment to education, specifically post-secondary alternative credentials like coding boot camps. So I'm in a really good position to speak on this topic. And the format for today is about 20 minutes of presentation, followed by open Q&A. Welcome, welcome. Bodie, everyone else, good to see you. Feel free to hop over to YouTube and you'll be able to see the full screen. Okay, great. So here is an outline. I'll give you a few bullet points on the background of the person who asked these questions, and maybe that will help you relate to this person. And then I will go through one by one the 8 questions they asked. After that, Q&A. Make sure to tap like on the video if you're interested in this, and that will help the algorithm share it out so more people can learn to code and land a job. So the background for this candidate, they're moving to the US and they got lucky in the green card lottery. Congrats. That's a big deal. They signed up for free code camp and for Latterly. You can sign up for free at latterly.io. They have already tried coding and they confirmed that they enjoy it. So one of the big differences between prospective learners that I see is there's a watershed moment where you actually try it and you actually decide if you like it or not. So they're already past that point. They are concerned about forking over the cash for a boot camp. They say it feels risky. They're worried about that sum of money. And they do already have a bachelor's degree. So they're wondering if it's even necessary. Their bachelor's degree is in international relations. So they feel as though there's a bit of a technical gap, right? This is not a computer science degree. And so they're wondering, is the boot camp the right way to solve this gap? Or maybe just some online courses or some YouTube videos could do the same. So hopefully you're wondering some of these same questions. First question, they ask, is unaccredited education as good as accredited? And this is their wording. And of course, an answer to this depends on what we mean by good, right? So there are a few reasons that I would say some people might prefer a boot camp in some situations where you wouldn't want a boot camp. On average, an alternative credential has little hiring power. That is the average certification, like a LinkedIn certification, or a certification for completing an online course, or the average boot camp. Any of these have very little correlation to a job. So you want to go for a prestigious certification or a prestigious boot camp, not the average one, and certainly not a below average one. So prestigious boot camps in particular, and we'll get into the definition of that later. These special boot camps, this is like the top 2% of boot camps, they have extremely high risk-adjusted ROI, particularly when paired with a job placement guarantee. The degree accelerates the job search at the cost of education time. So if you have an accredited degree, employers will prefer you to the unaccredited other at a rate of about 1 on a 10-point scale. And this translates to landing a job more quickly. Landing a job more quickly then, so that job search period is going to be more quickly, but you'll have to do this upfront investment of obtaining the degree, right? So that's a trade-off. Consider pursuing a degree even if you already have a coding job. You can leverage the employer tuition assistance. You can go to college sometimes for free. And then a really important point that I want to emphasize is that these two credentials are not competitive with one another. They're complementary. All right. So here's some references to the slide we just went over. So I have this paper on hireability and educational prestige. This defines the rule for a prestigious coding bootcamp. And basically, you can use a website called Course Report, coursereport.com. And you want to find a coding bootcamp with a rating of 4.25 or higher. and more than 400 reviews, or a Fortune 50 learning provider like Google. So Google provides some certifications. Those are quite good. Aline Lerner is the founder of interviewing.io, and she has done an analysis of technical certifications with their own data, showing a similar thing, that the average certification correlates negatively with technical interview performance. But there are a few that do a really great job. And so this green and underlined snippet of text has the link there, and you can go check out the names of those. One of them is TripleByte. TripleByte is a cert which is pretty good. Another is Coursera, and there are a couple others. Do boot camps pay to alter reviews on CourseReport.com? So the answer is sometimes yes. So one of the ways that they'll do this is they might see a negative review and then reach out to that student and say, and address the complaint basically, and then ask them to revise the review. So maybe a student complained that they didn't get good career services, or they didn't get enough mentorship time, or something like this. They might be able to try to make that up to them. Another way is on the front end. So one of the main ways that boot camps get good reviews is by investing into their curriculum, investing into their staff, and reducing their price. And this is essentially a way of investing money to improve those reviews, right? Most of the reviews aren't updated, and outright fraud is generally absent. That's important to point out. I think some people ask this question and they're wondering about like fraudulent activity. That generally doesn't occur. It's often a little more subtle than that. And another really important point is that regardless of how those reviews are occasionally changed, the science shows that there's a causal relation between those reviews and the perceptions of employers. So even if there are alterations, and I think there are, they're still really useful. They're still really useful. So let's not say that, oh, some of these reviews have been altered and therefore throw them all out. They're extremely useful even if they are occasionally altered. And by the way, you can check out Council on Integrity and Results Reporting, or just use another third party. So Course Report provided the data for the paper that I cited, but there are additional sources that you can check, and by all means cross-reference. So if it's good on the criteria of prestige earlier presented, and then it's also well-reputed under SIR, the Council on Integrity and Results Reporting, if they also speak well of it, now you have 2 green flags, right? So feel free to check multiple sources. Mr. Creative, thanks for the question. I'll address that when we get to the section on Q&A after the slides. So we have 8 of these questions to go through first. By the way, if you're on TikTok, you can head over to YouTube and see the full screen. Connor, hello over on LinkedIn. All right, question 3. Should I expect to obtain a job within 18 months of bootcamp graduation? The answer is absolutely yes. If you're not getting a job within 18 months, first of all, it's far too late because you should have detected a problem much earlier. So you should actually expect to get a job within 6 months. And I would say ideally you're doing checks monthly. You're checking on your job search performance. You should keep a spreadsheet of the companies to which you've applied. You should socially network and follow up with individuals at those companies. Make a note of the contact on the spreadsheet. Make a note of your location in the pipeline. So you'll often do an initial informational interview followed by an initial technical round or a technical screen. And then you may have 1 or 2 more rounds after that, usually culminating in a final loop. So there's a number of stages there, and you should be able to make a note of which stage you got to, and if you got to the offer stage, what's the nature of the offer. You can track all of these things. And if you haven't gotten a job within a few months, which is quite common, some people do, some people don't at that 3-month mark, but what you should see is monthly improvements in your job search performance. So you should be getting better and better at the interviews. You should start to anticipate those questions. You may have refined your resume a few times. That's quite common. And so at the 3-month mark, if you are not seeing improvement in your performance, I think you should reach out and get help at that point. Many of these boot camps like Springboard will offer a job guarantee. So Springboard offers a job guarantee within 6 months. And then FlexJobs and multiple other data sources, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, find that most job searches take 3 to 6 months. So 18 is frankly outrageous, and you should seek help a year before you get to that point. Could obtaining a degree quickly be better than attending a boot camp? So I think the spirit of this question is realizing that the usual degree takes 4 or 5 years to obtain, even if we call it a 4-year degree. Many people are taking 5 years to get that. And by taking this much time, you are diluting the return on investment because you're paying another year of tuition, another year of foregone earnings, etc. And this creates one of the attractive value propositions of the coding bootcamp is that this can be completed in 6 months. So even if that boot camp is on the expensive side, maybe it's 20 grand, which is expensive for a boot camp, that is often made up by the fact that the duration of learning is so much shorter that you can realize those otherwise foregone earnings. So the spirit of the question is, maybe I can just go to college more quickly and it becomes a more competitive option. And the logic is completely correct. This is absolutely a good point. We can see that 80% of professional developers have completed some form of higher education. If you're going to be in the 20% that has not a college degree, not even an associate's degree, we're talking about secondary school or even not having graduated from secondary school. So that would be the 20%. If you're going to be in the 20%, you're in an unlikely situation, aren't you? And so you need to work even harder and demonstrate your skill. It's quite difficult to do with a boot camp. One of the things you can do is make sure that you're attending a prestigious boot camp, not an average boot camp. The good news here is that the placement rates are quite even. So even though 80% of professional developers have some form of higher education, SUR found that coding boot camps have a placement rate of 71%, while Georgetown found that computer science degrees have a placement rate of 72%. And computer science degrees are some of the most competitive degrees in the programming industry and in the labor market, full stop. So what this means is that if you're looking at a high quality boot camp, it's really pretty competitive with a CS program. And so then the question there becomes the cost, right? Harvard isn't cheap. Harvard isn't cheap, but even Harvard has fantastic scholarships for some people. So these are the personal factors that you're going to want to consider. And you should be comparing particular programs, including their scholarships, their duration, their placement rates, and their outcomes. Compare particular programs instead of making generalizations about boot camps and traditional courses. Does having a degree in an unrelated field affect employability? The answer is yes, it does. Having a degree at all is an improvement. We just covered the 80 versus 20. So having a degree at all puts you in the 80. And you would actually be normal here to have not a computer science degree. So most developers do not have a computer science degree. So having a degree in an unrelated field is actually the norm. But there is an advantage to having that computer science degree. It's the second highest paying degree field. The other degree, I think, was chemical engineering. So how do we square the fact that most developers don't have the CS degree, but those developers that do have a CS degree are getting paid more? We just noticed that there's a job search performance advantage to that CS degree. And much of this is explained by the fact that universities have partner programs with employers. And computer science students are encouraged to get internships while they're still in school. So if you are coming from an alternative background, if you have some other degree, maybe a health degree, or even a non-STEM degree, you would likely have missed out on those employer university partner programs. You would likely have missed out on getting an internship. And so you would basically be one step behind in the career progression ladder. So you still get into the career. Your computer science counterpart might be at a tier 1 employer, and you might have to accept a tier 2 or 3 employer. So you're still getting that job, but you're getting paid a little bit less. Benefits might not be as great, and so on. Thanks for being here. I'm taking questions at the end. We're on question 6 of 8 right now. So what are some budget-friendly alternatives to coding boot camps? Latterly.io is a site that I run. It's free and open source, and there is a higher paid tier available as well. And then you can do one-on-one mentorship programs as an additional offering. And some of those mentorship programs have a job guarantee. So check that out. Mentorship programs in general are an alternative to a coding bootcamp. Online courses are another alternative. Beware of the fact that online courses have much lower placement rates. So where a coding bootcamp would have a placement rate of around 90%, Coursera, which is a best in the industry online course in partnership with Meta, they boast of a 1 in 4 placement rate. So that's 25%. So you're comparing 25% to 90%. So it's an option on the table. It works. It's substantially cheaper. But there is a major gap in job search performance there. Self-study. This is another thing that you can do, and the out-of-pocket expense is much lower. You can just go to YouTube and watch some well-curated videos. And the performance of this it's just even worse than an online course. So unaided self-study is even lower performance than an online course, and an online course is already not performing very well. Based on a Stack Overflow study, I am doing some napkin math to compute that I think that the number here is less than 10% of programmers. But I do think that this is a place where more research could be done, because many programmers identify as self-taught, even if they have graduated from college, even if they've gone to a boot camp. They're taking that moniker of self-taught because, for example, the computer science degree might not have taught them how to write JavaScript. So it could be missing the syntax element, even if it gives you the abstract data structures and algorithms. The syntax might be a self-taught component. So that would be like partially self-taught, but the way it comes through in these surveys is they identify as self-taught. So it's really strange. Actually, most programmers identify as self-taught, and at the same time, about 80% of programmers have a degree, as we earlier saw. So the notion that you don't get a degree and you don't go to a boot camp, so that you might call that like the YouTube style self-taught. I've personally never met any of these people, and I've met many programmers, and I think a 10% estimate based on the data would be frankly generous. I think it's actually smaller than that. Certifications I don't think of these as an alternative. I think of these as a complement, but if you are going that YouTube self-taught route, you can leverage a certification, and that would be better than just watching the YouTube videos. So the LinkedIn skill assessments in particular have a notable job search lift, and LinkedIn will give you advantage on their own platform as an applicant, which is really nice. I encourage you to do that even if you go to a coding bootcamp. And I think many coding bootcamps would do the same, is after you complete, when you get into the job search phase, they will often encourage you to take some of these LinkedIn skill assessments. What about Udemy? So this individual directly asked me about Udemy, and the answer is no, I don't recommend Udemy. I also don't recommend Udacity. The Learner Study looks through many of these certifications, their data plus my own data, and other data on brand recognition would greatly favor using Coursera. So the Coursera course is developed in partnership with Meta, and once the Meta term goes on your resume, it starts performing better. Imagine that. Last question, number 8. How can I minimize risk when deciding whether to attend a coding bootcamp? Choose a prestigious coding bootcamp, not the average coding bootcamp, certainly not a worse than average performing coding bootcamp. As we covered, the rule for identifying a prestigious coding bootcamp, 400 or more reviews, rating of 4.25 or higher on Course Report. That will find about the top 3% of boot camps, and that's been studied in the academic literature. You can raise the 4.25 to a number of 4.5, and that will take it to the top 2% of coding boot camps, but that number has no particular academic backing. It's simply just raising the bar intuitively on these metrics that we know have some baseline performance improvement. Look for the job guarantee. It's hard to minimize risk more than a job guarantee. And I think if you look in these 20 or so coding boot camps, I think only 2 to 4 of them have a job guarantee. At the time of writing, Springboard and Career Foundry are 2 that do meet this over 4.5 with a job guarantee. And I think Springboard, I think both of them are also below the average in terms of course-wise cost as well. So really a lot of wins there. You would want to analyze these top 20 coding boot camps based on your own schedule availability. So whether you can do an intensive 12-week that could be beyond the 40-hour study week, maybe it's like a 60-hour study week. Some of these boot camps do have 60-hour programs. Maybe that's way too much. Maybe you want to go for a typical full-time at 40 or even a 30 or even a part-time at 20 or 10. I don't recommend doing less than 10. I have seen some of the websites, and I won't name names, but I've seen some of these websites in a Q&A on the website telling their students less than 10 hours a week is fine, it will just take you longer. As an academic, I don't think it's fine. There's the forgetting curve, and you will lose retention. So there's a point at which not only does completion take you longer, there's a point at which you're actually not retaining the information. And maybe you do finally complete the course, but you didn't retain any of it. And you move into the interview phase and your interview performance is abysmal because you were under the forgetting curve. So I strongly encourage more than 10 hours a week. If you have to, 20 will work in a part-time situation, but we do know that academic performance is impeded if you're working full-time and studying part-time. So it can work, I've done it, but it will produce suboptimal retention. So just be prepared for that. You may need to brush up further after you complete the course. You may need to brush up further on your interview prep, or you might have a slightly elongated job search phase. Some other things that you can do are message the alumni on LinkedIn. So if you're deciding maybe there's 3 boot camps that are your top 3 and you really can't decide, reach out on LinkedIn to their alumni. First of all, just having a larger alumni network is a positive because that will improve your job search performance. And it's a really good reason to network and to grow your professional network before you've even started learning. You can learn in public, you can build in public, and you can message these alumni on LinkedIn. When you're going through your job search phase later, compare 2 situations. The situation where you have maybe 50 or 100 LinkedIn connections and you know them from high school because they're family and from your other career, whatever it might be, unrelated to tech. And compare that to a situation where you have 2, 3, or even 1,000 LinkedIn connections that know you because you connected with them as part of your learning journey, or maybe you were learning in public and got a bit of a social following. Great, so that does it for the lecture portion. Let's move over to the Q&A. So one question from Latrell says, any website I can use to learn coding? Absolutely. We've gone through a few here. One is here on the screen, latterly.io. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Oh, that's no good. So here's Laterally.io. There is a free tier. It's also open source in addition to being free, so you can contribute to the curriculum if you'd like. 24/7 chatbot support using Claude LLM. Then you can pay as little as $1 a month to unlock this advanced checklist that has evidence-based tools to improve your job search performance. Just things like check out interviewing.io. Maybe you don't know about it. Check out LinkedIn Premium. Why would you want to use LinkedIn Premium? Well, InMail is 4.6 times more effective than emails alone. So there are these evidence-based tools that little by little substantially improve your job search performance. And then recommendations on specializing with T-shaped skills. These are in the advanced checklist. For free, you get the standard checklist. And this also answers your question, Luttrell. So Laterally recommends Codecademy Pro Frontend or Coursera, as we talked about in the slide deck, a reputable coding bootcamp, or a Laterally mentorship. In that reputable coding bootcamp, we covered the criteria for prestige. Mr. Creative, currently doing CS50. What should I do next? Trying to become an entry-level software engineer. I would encourage you right here, Mr. Creative, is check out Laterally.io and just follow the checklist. And so, to be clear, I do recommend going through one of these in addition to CS50. I don't think CS50 is a substitute for one of these other programs. And after you go through the basic education, the next step would be to build a portfolio. Carolina, can you please record this? Heading to sleep. I have finals in grad school. Yep, as Body mentioned, this is all recorded. It'll be available on my YouTube. So that is Programming with John, or youtube.com/John Vandeveer. If you are on TikTok, you can also see the YouTube link in my TikTok bio. How is the donation site going? It's going pretty well. I'm hoping to have it completed by the end of November. What's up? Good to see you here. Camilo asks, what age do you recommend to start with Laterally.io? I think you can start with Laterally as early as middle school. I wouldn't recommend that, but I think that would be the youngest. I would recommend it for high schoolers and older. High schoolers and older. All right. Any last questions? I'm seeing no further questions at the moment. We'll give it one more minute. Feel free to drop your question and we'll go right to it. Camilo says, okay, what sites are there for middle schoolers? I like Khan Academy. I think Khan Academy has evidence on the efficacy of their programs. I did work at College Board for a while, and they partner directly with the College Board. Really good stuff over there. Who came first, the chicken or the egg? The answer is the chicken. It's right there in the question, isn't it? Those letters were earlier in the sentence. So if we're going by index anyway. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow the channel, whether that's TikTok or YouTube, and share this video out with your loved ones who may be interested in coding. Whether you're interested in learning to code or whether you're already an established programmer, it would be great to see you over in the Discord. And you can access the Discord by once again visiting Latterly. Just scroll to the bottom and there's the Discord link. Yep, Discord link right there at the bottom of latterly.io. All right, have a good one.